does a cold air intake actually work? I would say what is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, thanks for tuning in. So today we got kind of an interesting video for you guys, something I mentioned in my last video, and that is going to be answering a question that I have been asked over and over and over and over again, being told I'm wrong, some people telling me I'm right. So we're going to get down to the bottom of it and actually answer this question. How much does a cold air intake actually help compared to the standard 6637 open element intake that I have on my truck right now? So for those of you that are not aware, I currently have the 6637 filter on my truck right now. It's basically the big honking air filter that you see on Cummins, 6637 Napa filter. It's got a number of different names, but it's basically a big giant open air dry filter that basically just sits inside your engine bay and sucks in a whole lot of air. I've been told time and time again that I shouldn't be using this filter because it sucks in warm engine air and it's detrimental to the performance of the truck. Now, I'm not going to say that these people are wrong. Yes, it does suck in warm engine air from underneath the hood of the truck. Now, where I disagree with them is I don't think it makes a very big difference. So today's video, like I said, we're going to be testing this out. Obviously I have my 6637 filter inside the truck, and now we have a nice S&B cold air intake that's going to be going on the truck, and we're going to be doing a before and after test of actually looking at the intake air temperatures to see how much they actually change. To try to keep this fair, how I'm going to be comparing this is I'm going to be taking the ambient air temperature, or the temperature that's just around the truck, the temperature of the day, and compare it to the intake air temperatures going into the engine, and we're going to be looking at the difference between the two. Now, if the cold air intake makes a good difference and does what it's supposed to do and sucks in cold air, we should see a bit of a difference of the actual intake temperatures going into the truck. Obviously, right now, the temperatures I'm seeing are just the temperatures basically underneath the hood, right next to the air filter where the sensor's kind of just sitting there. When we put in the new cold air intake, we're going to be seeing the temperatures inside the intake tube. That's after the filter, so we're going to see what air temperatures are like coming into the engine. Like I said, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference, but we're going to try and find out for you guys today. So if this seems like something any of you guys would be interested in, stay tuned, watch the video. I'm going to go get the truck fired up, get it warmed up, and then we're going to go for a quick drive and get a baseline of numbers of what it's looking like with the open air filter. Then we can compare it to the cold air intake. So I'm going to go pop open the hood, give you guys a quick look at what we're looking like with my filter setup right now, and then we're going to go hit the road and see what our numbers are looking like for our baseline test. For those of you that may be new to the channel, this is my truck, 2007.3 Powerstroke. Basically the main content on the channel is around this, so this is what we're going to be doing the tests on. Alrighty, so here you guys go. Give you guys a quick look under the hood just so you can see what the baseline is. For those of you that don't know, this is a 6637 air filter. Basically, you pull out the factory box and flat filter and put this one in its place, and it just flows a lot more air. I mean, I don't know the CFM on it, but these things are pretty darn high flowing. Now, as you can see, it is completely open element, sucking in engine air. It does have, or I do still have, the factory air intake that goes up to the front of the engine here, and so it is blowing cool air back there, and then it's got a hole in the fender right here, but obviously there's a leather or a plastic or rubber cap there, so it's not sucking in cold air from there, and it's not directly sucking cold in air from there. So let's see if I can find it. There's a little intake air temp sensor on the truck. Set you guys down here real quick. Found the sensor. That's what it is right there. I think it just reads the air intake temperatures coming in around the filter, and so we'll be plugging that into the new intake inside the filter side of it, going to the turbo, so we'll get a good idea of what it's actually looking like. And then of course on this setup, all it's reading is what the actual air temperatures are sitting kind of around the filter. It's just kind of sitting around in the same general area. So that should give us a pretty good idea of what temperatures we're actually looking like and if we see a difference. All right, so we'll get it started up, let her warm up. go. Alright, so here we go. We got the truck warming up, and I'll give you guys an idea of what we're going to be looking at. The two gauges we want to look at is this one, which is ambient air temperature, which right now we're sitting at about 55 degrees. It's starting to warm up as the engine's warming up because the sensor is kind of sitting in the fender. And then we'll change this battery voltage to the intake air temperature. There we go, we got intake air temperature right there. We'll exit out. So as you can see right now, our intake air temperatures are sitting right around 50. Ambient air temperature is 55 because that is starting to take in temperature around the fenders as it's warming up. So I'm gonna switch you guys over to the GoPro, so the audio won't be as great, but it should work out fine. And we're going to do some driving. We'll do some probably slower driving, maybe some faster driving, and we'll get an idea of what it actually looks like when we're moving, to see what the difference is between the two. Alright, so we're going to hop on the highway real quick and do a short drive so we can get a long, steady drive to see if we can equal out the temperatures and get a better idea of what we're actually looking like, as opposed to having this more stop and go. Hopefully traffic's not too bad and we can get a good straightaway. Has gone up. It's going up some more. Now 64. 62. I'm slowing down traffic here. We'll go up to 60 miles an hour. Alright, so at 60 miles an hour, it looks like we're looking at about 7 or 8 degrees above outside air temperature, so a 7 or 8 degree increase. You can see it swapping back and forth a little bit. Right now it's holding at 60. There. So I think it's probably safe to say 60 miles an hour we're seeing. Yeah, it's going back down to 58. Probably a 7 or 8 degree difference between outside and intake temperatures. You guys can't hardly see this thing right now. The glare's pretty bad. Alright, so we got cruise control set at just about 70 miles an hour. Let's see what our temps do. It looks like we've settled out pretty close at 68 degrees intake temperatures. Outside temperature should be around 51 to 52. So at 70 miles an hour, we're looking at around 18 degrees warmer. Well, all right, guys, there's the driving test for the initial. I know it's probably pretty long. I'm realizing this video is probably going to be a pretty long video, but I want to get you guys good numbers. So right now, I'm just parked, letting it idle. We're going to idle for, I don't know, 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, and we'll see how hot it actually gets up to, if it seems to level out, because as you guys probably saw in the driving, it's when we slow down and we stop getting that airflow through the engine bay that it really starts to warm up, and it warms up pretty quickly. I guess as a little bit of a recap for the numbers we were seeing, I'll probably put them up on the screen too so you guys can see them. But driving around 65 to 70, I'd say it's probably safe to say that our temperatures were running 10 to 18 degrees hotter than outside temperatures. I know it's a pretty big range. We can settle, let's say 15 degrees, and we'll put that as the average because it was a little bit different depending on whether we were going 60, 65, or 70. 70, it looked like it was getting pretty close to 20 degrees warmer, 18 to 20 degrees warmer as far as intake temperatures go versus the actual outside air temperatures. So right now, I'll give you guys a look at what we're looking at as idle temperatures. So right now, we kind of can't really go off the temperature setting up there because it's starting to warm up now that we're parked anyways. But we'll say that the outside temperature is about 51, 52 degrees. Right now we are showing right at about 72, switching to 74. So we're showing about 20 degrees hotter now that we've been sitting and not moving. So yeah, I'm going to let this idle for a little bit longer and we'll see what it gets up to. So we've been going for about 5 minutes now, and it seems to have steadied out a little bit. Looks like we're sitting at 76 degrees intake temperature, which would be right around 25 to 26 degrees hotter than the temperatures outside. So there we go. Looks like idling, we are sitting right around 25 to 26 degrees hotter than outside temperatures. It's actually not as hot as I thought it would be. Obviously, it's not a cooking day. I don't know if that would have a huge effect on it because we are just measuring the difference between inside and outside temperatures. I guess if it's a 90-degree day, we'd be looking at close to 115, 120 degrees intake temperatures, which isn't great. Again, like I said, I think this is where we're going to see the cold air intake shine, is when we're sitting and not moving and not getting the airflow through the engine bay. So now it is time to get back to the house and install the new intake and see what differences it makes. guys, we're at a bit of a stopping point, or a point where I think I can give you a good update before I start buttoning everything up. Although the camera doesn't make it look like it, we're actually losing light here pretty quickly. So let me guys show you what I was talking about and give you guys a little bit of tips and advice from my end. Here we go, obviously looking down into the truck. We got the battery tray where the tray sits here. Nothing too crazy about this part, just bolts in place with 2 original bolts there and the 2 original bolts there. A mistake I made is not having the intake tube in the filter while I was putting it in, or not in the filter, in the box while I was putting it in. You can't make it fit once it's already in. I thought I was going to be able to put the box in and then just slide this up inside and connect it. It doesn't fit around the intercooler tube. It's a tight fit. So for those that know, make sure you put the intake tube on before you bolt it all down, because you won't be able to get it on otherwise. So another thing I forgot, which is kind of important, kind of the whole purpose of this video, is the intake air temperature. The intake air temperature sensor, which goes in right down there. Give it a little bit of light for you guys. Plugs in through that grommet right down there. And of course I forgot to put that in, and there's not a whole lot of space and not a lot of extra wire loom to be able to get it in there once the box is already in. So then again, I had to take the box back out, put that in, and of course that's sitting in a little bit of a grommet, which is hard to tell, but first time I was trying to put it in, I knocked the grommet out. Of course the grommet fell down into the abyss of the engine bay, so I had to go track that down and find it, which took a while, but I got it done. It's all basically back together, and I wanted to show you guys that before putting it in. I would say overall it's not a hard job to do. It would actually be pretty darn quickly if I didn't mess up on that and didn't forget that. So a couple other issues I ran into was all my wiring stuff I have here. It's just kind of in the way, which I am actually going to be relocating it to sitting on top of the box anyways, because of my drip rail right here. It actually drips down right near all the wiring connections, which of course I didn't like. Another issue I ran into that you guys won't have to deal with is the fuel line I had. Originally, this fuel line right here, I had it routed underneath the stock intake box and up into the engine. I don't think there's enough room underneath this intake box because it's bigger, and so I ended up rerouting that, and I have to shorten up the line a little bit, but it all should be good. It's just another thing that slowed me down a little bit. Something that you guys won't have to deal with. All in all, if you guys are just doing this on like a stock truck without all this extra crap, and you don't make the same mistakes I did, it could easily be in within an hour. So don't be shied away by me making it look harder than it actually is. Just a couple things I have to deal with on top of trying not to fall in my ass this whole time while I'm working up here. So I just wanted to give you guys that little bit of an update before I put the filter in here. Filter will connect onto this intake tube, obviously, and then of course all the cold air is going to come in through here and come in, you guys can't see it, through that intake tube right there in the fender. Of course, the point of the video is we're going to see how much of a difference it actually makes in an air temperature sensor now that it's all sealed off from the engine bay. There'll be, you'll see this, I'll probably show it, but there'll be a nice plexiglass top that covers or seals that with the seal around it. Yeah, so I'm going to work on getting it back together, getting the filter back on, getting the battery back in place, switching up all my wiring, so it's going to be probably sitting on top of the filter assembly, which unfortunately isn't quite as pretty, but functionality is more important. I don't want a bunch of water dripping onto all my wiring connections. And then of course I got to figure out what to do with all my gauges, or all my gauge connections, because originally I had them sitting underneath the air filter. Now there's not an underneath anymore, so figure out what I got to do with that. It's going to take a little bit of problem solving. I will update you guys once it's all back together. Alrighty guys, it is time for me to show you the basically final result of the install. As you can tell, it is starting to get pretty cold here. Winter is definitely setting in. I think it's only like 40 degrees right now, so it's not like crazy cold, but we were down to the low 20s last night. I thought about getting a cold start video for you guys, but I didn't really feel like getting up at 7 in the morning on my day off. So at some point I'll get a cold start video for you guys. But too much rambling. Let me show you guys what it actually looks like. This isn't the final result in terms of all the wiring and stuff. It's still a little bit unbuttoned and uncleaned because I want to have a little bit of flexibility if I want to change anything down the road, but for now it's basically what it's going to look like for a little bit. So let me show you guys what it looks like. As you can see, I got it all installed, buttoned up. It's all nice and clean. Got the new intake coming in, new intake on the fender, and then the nice sealed off air box. And then I moved all my wiring and relay stuff from back there in the corner up to on top of the box. So instead of having it back there in the corner, I ended up mounting it with a little bit of Velcro tape on top of the air box. I'm not overly happy with it because it doesn't look nearly as clean, but in terms of functionality and how it's actually working and being protected, this is definitely better. So it is what it is. Space is kind of a premium under the hoods of these things. There's not a ton of extra room, and this isn't even a newer truck, but there's not a ton of extra room, and I didn't want to run all the wires into my cab for anything. So for the time being, it's going to be here until I can think of a better spot for it, if I ever do. With it being said, I do have some extra wires that I can shorten up and clean up and reroute, so it does look a little bit cleaner, but for now I left them all at full length, just for the flexibility down the road. But all of that aside, it is nice and installed. It was a little bit more of a process than I expected. I will say S&B makes it a very tight fit. They're definitely utilizing as much space as they can, which made it a little bit of a trickier install, but it's not bad. Like I said earlier, if you don't have any of this stuff or any of the sensor harnesses or my aftermarket fuel system, it is a pretty simple install. It just takes a little bit of time. So I got it all wrapped up. I didn't have too many hours into it. It was mainly just spread over a few days because I have a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, again, for the time being, I have all my sensors, connectors hooked up right there. Of course, I have one going to my fuel pressure, one going to my ambient air temperature sensor, which I guess I never explained to you guys. My ambient air temperature runs along the inside of this fender, down the front of the truck, and comes out right around behind the headlight. I try to keep it as far away from the engine heat as possible, just so it doesn't keep or suck in as much of that or read as much of it as possible. But as you saw in the first test, when I stop and the engine heat starts to radiate out, it does pick up some of it, but for the most part, while we're moving, it seems to be very, very accurate. I guess the only thing we have left to do is to do the actual driving test and show you guys what kind of a difference. So I guess the last thing we have to do is to show you the actual driving test and see what kind of a difference a cold air intake actually makes from intake temperatures versus outside air temperatures. I have probably 10 miles of driving on it right now, and unfortunately I think I'm going to tell you guys that I think I'm going to be eating my words on this test as far as how well these intakes actually work. So let me get the truck fired up, maybe show you guys a little bit of a cold start, and we'll get driving. So the truck is basically warmed up now. I'm going to be switching you guys over to the GoPro just so you guys can tell. Right now, again, we're looking at this temperature up here, which is 48.2, which is the outside air temperature, and the intake temperature. Now, something interesting to note is that it's showing outside temperature of 48, but that's because it's been sitting by the running engine. The actual outside air temperature right now is sitting right about 43 degrees, which is basically what our intake temperature is showing. You see it going back and forth between the two. So even though we're parked and idling, engines at almost 100 degrees, we're still showing at basically no increase in air temperature. So I'm going to switch you guys over to the GoPro. Hopefully this works out a little better so you can get a little bit more of an angle, or a better angle than what we had on the first test. And we're going to go for a drive and see how it does. Alright, so we are getting close to full operating temperature. As you can see, we're at 170 and we're coming up to a stoplight. We'll see what the temperature changes look like when we're not moving. We should see the outside temperature start to go up pretty quickly, and we'll see what the air intake temperatures do. As of right now, they are holding pretty solid. Didn't change at all. Maybe went up a degree. Alright, so we're going to be getting on the highway like our last initial test, and we'll see how it does around the 60 to 75 mile an hour range. Just a reminder, looking back at the original one, it looked like we were sitting right at about 10 to 20 degrees warmer, depending on what speed we were going. Let's see. Alright, right now we're going just about 55 miles an hour. Temperatures are showing 44 and a half. Looks like it's settling down a little bit. We'll see what it looks like as it settles out. Again, the outside temperature should be around 43 degrees, maybe a little less as we get into the more open areas. But as you can tell, our air intake temperatures are still showing lower than what our temperature probe is showing for outside temperature, which our temperature probe will still be picking up on a little bit of engine heat. So I think it's safe to say that at least at 55, cold air intake is working phenomenal. We'll bump it up in speed a little bit. 60 miles an hour, we're still holding rock steady at 42 degrees at intake temperature. At this point on the last test, we were probably around 10 degrees warmer as intake temperatures go. So let's bump it up a little bit. Going 65. It looks like we're only getting colder. Probably getting a little colder outside, but still holding rock solid, or still below what our temperature probe is showing for ambient air. Right now, it looks like the cold air intake is working phenomenal. Easily a 10 to 15 degree difference. Let's bump it up to 70. At 70 to 75 is when we really started to see it bump up close to the 20 degree difference between outside and intake temperatures. And right now, still holding rock solid below what the probe is showing. I am surprisingly impressed at the numbers I'm seeing with this intake. Alright, I just pulled off the highway, switching back to the normal camera to get you guys a little bit better audio and video. As you can see, the temperatures are starting to go up more now that we have stopped. We were at right around 42 degrees intake temperatures. It's up to 46 now and 49. I mean, that temperature's going up quickly. That temperature doesn't really matter. We'll just say outside temperature is right around 42 to 43 degrees. So we'll see, let it idle for 5 to 10 minutes like we did last time, and kind of see where it levels out at, how much above ambient temperature it's looking like. I guess while we're waiting, I'll discuss kind of that last test we did. I think it's safe to say that the cold air intake works a lot better than the open element filter. I know to some of you guys it may be like, no shit, of course it does. But to be completely honest, kind of like I said, I didn't think it would work that much better, especially under driving conditions when we have a lot of airflow flowing through the engine bay. I thought it wouldn't make a huge difference, but it made a very, very, very visible difference. Obviously, it's not the same temperatures as it was during the initial test. Probably 10 degrees cooler, maybe 5 to 10 degrees cooler. But as far as how we're measuring it goes, that shouldn't matter much. But with the last test with the open element filter, we were seeing anywhere between 10 to 15 degree increase under driving conditions around 65. As soon as we got up to 70, 75, we shot up to close to 20 degree difference in temperature. And on this test, obviously, on this test I wasn't able to get up to 60, or wasn't able to get up to 75 because of traffic. But even at 70, we were holding rock solid at outside temperatures with zero increase. So does a cold air intake actually work? I would say yes, it does, hands down. Held rock solid at outside temperatures. Now, obviously it's not the heat of the summer right now. I don't know how much of a difference or what kind of difference it would make if it was a 90 plus degree day. But I would imagine you could probably expect pretty similar results where if it's 90 degrees outside, you're probably seeing pretty close to 90 degree intake temperatures as opposed to over 100 with the open element filter. So does the cold air intake work? Yes. Pretty substantial difference. I don't remember what the idle temperatures were on the last video test or the initial test, what kind of difference we were looking at right now. After a few minutes of idling, we're sitting right around 51 to 52 degrees, which would be about 10 degrees warmer than outside air temperatures. So I'm going to let it idle a little bit, and I'll get back to you guys in a second. All right, after about 5 minutes of idling or so, it looks like we've settled out to around 53 degrees. It keeps switching between 52 and 54. So it looks like it's picking up the same temperature as what the external probe is. So probably around 10 degree difference, give or take a degree, above outside air temperatures. Like I said, I don't remember what the original test was, but I'll display it on the screen when I go through and do all the editing for this video. But overall, I'm pretty darn happy with the results I got from this. I kind of got it more as just something to clean up the engine bay, but the performance increase, or I guess, I don't know if performance increase is the right way to say it because I don't really feel a difference, but as far as like statistical difference goes, it definitely made a pretty good difference in temperatures. So do I think a cold air intake is worth $300 if this one was worth? I don't know. It's probably better for the engine. Obviously, I don't have it on a dyno, so I can't tell you guys what kind of difference it's making, but I mean, 10 to 20 degree difference is a pretty substantial difference when you're talking about intake temperatures going into the engine. Obviously, the colder the air going in, the more you can compress it. More air you get in, the better efficiency or bigger boom you get in the cylinders, better fuel mileage. I guess I'll see if I get any difference in fuel mileage, see if it increases it at all. If it does, I'll get back to you guys and let you guys know. Do I think the S&B filter is worth $300? No. I think it's a little overpriced for what it is, but that being said, compared to everything on the market, I think it's relatively reasonably priced compared to the market, and for what you're getting, I think it's probably the best out of all the options out there. So I guess take it as it is. If you guys are interested in the S&B intake, obviously I'm pretty happy with it. As far as market price goes, I think it's the best on the market that there is, and it definitely makes a difference in terms of a cold air intake. So if you guys are interested, as always, I try to leave my whole build list in the description so you guys can go and check them out, see what the prices are. If you're interested, you can order it, great. The channel does get a benefit from you guys buying through those links. It doesn't cost you anything extra. It basically makes it so Amazon gets less money and I get like a 2 or 3% cut out of it. It's not much, but it helps out, helps bring some more money into the channel so I can get better content for you guys. I think that is going to be a wrap on today's video. If you guys have any questions or comments, as always, leave them down below and I should be able to get back to just about everybody that leaves a comment. I do still read every single comment. It's getting harder to respond to everybody, but I do my best to do that. Of course, if you guys like the video or you found it useful, give it a thumbs up. I appreciate it. Basically helps YouTube know that the channel is doing good and people like it, and YouTube shares it more so more people can see it. We're coming up on 3,000 subscribers, which is awesome. So thank you to you all that have joined on. If you're not subscribed, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. We have some pretty fun stuff coming. We got a new turbo coming in the truck here pretty darn soon. I got a whole bunch of new intercooler piping, new intercooler boots. We're going to be throwing some powder coating under the hood, making it look a little prettier, as pretty as a 7.3 can get. So that should be pretty cool. Just in general, we got a lot of stuff coming. Maybe a new truck coming to the channel in the near future. We'll see. That's still in the works, and I'm not sure how it's going to play out yet. But we got a lot of cool stuff. So if you're not subscribed, I encourage you to subscribe. Yeah, it was Thanksgiving weekend. I had a great time with friends and family. A late night playing some games, which was always fun. Getting to put on some Christmas music finally. It's my favorite time of year. So hopefully you guys had a good Thanksgiving, good holiday season coming up. I'll catch you guys on the next video.